Hello everybody, welcome to the Journey to Grandmaster series where I showcase 3 games that I played recently in my journey to becoming a Grandmaster. We're only doing 2 episodes today because after these 2 games, let's just say I went on a losing streak after being tilted. So what happened is I had 3 days of bad sleep and then I studied for many hours, studied chess for many hours. Then I decided it was a good idea to try to play a match on bad sleep and while I'm very tired. And so I started losing, and then I got tilted, and I kept playing and playing, and I went on a losing streak. So the games I'm showing today are 2 games before I went on the losing streak. So this was the day before, so when I played this, I had 2 days of bad sleep, and I played this while I was tired as well. But I was barely able to hold on. So because I got tilted, I decided to actually take a hiatus from chess for a bit until I fix my sleep schedule. So the Journey to Grandmaster series will be put to a halt for maybe a month or a couple of weeks. But I will be doing other content until I get my sleep schedule back together. I'm still going to be studying chess, but I'm not going to play the actual game until my sleep schedule's better, because I need to play chess at my best and not while I'm tired and on bad sleep. This is episode 10 to the Journey to Grandmaster series, and the first game is d4, knight f6, knight f3, g6, g3, bishop g7, bishop g2, castles, bishop f4, which I thought this was a bad move. Here I thought he was gonna go into like a sort of King's Indian fianchetto variation with after something like d6, c4, knight c6 and knight c3. But he didn't go for the fianchetto variation of the King's Indian defense. Instead he goes for this weird variation. And I realize he doesn't want to take up the center space with something like c4 because he played bishop f4, so instead I take up some space in the center by playing d5. He plays knight c3, attacking my pawn. Knight c6. Here I played this too fast, I think. Again, I was tired, so I didn't really take much time to think. So I kind of played knight c6 pretty fast. And knight d2, which I knew was a very bad move, because it kind of undefends this pawn a bit. And the engine wants me to play knight d4 because the pawn is undefended. But again, I'm tired and I didn't think that much. And I kind of played fast, so I played knight h5, attacking the bishop, putting more attackers on an undefended pawn. And he plays e4. Completely... Well, the bishop's not hanging, but a knight for his dark-squared bishop is amazing, because I have a dark-squared fianchetto bishop, and the dark squares will be uncontested. So knight takes f4, g takes f4, d takes e4, and knight d takes e4. And here, my goal is to put pressure on the c2 pawn. There's a lot way better moves like knight takes d4, still just getting a free pawn because this pawn is still undefended, or 3 defenders versus 1, which is the queen. But instead, I decided to add pressure along this diagonal with bishop f5, queen d2, I'm guessing preparing long castles, and here I just decide to take the pawn. And now h4 is played, which doesn't really do anything. So I add the pressure on this diagonal, on this file, by playing rook f to d1, or d8, rook f d8, and now I'm threatening some nasty check here, maybe after takes, and bishop takes, or knight takes, I take the queen, or maybe after takes, the queen takes. and then I take with the rook or the bishop, but white's in trouble here. But instead of doing anything to help prevent any of this, like queen takes d4 and rook takes d4, and this knight is being attacked twice, but it's well defended. Instead of going for this line, he plays h5, completely ignoring the fact that I could just take on d2 here. And knight takes d2, and here I play bishop takes c2, but there's a better move here. Because knight b4, actually wait, I actually saw knight b4 for a second, but I forgot that after this, it's attacked twice, the c2 pawn, and I could just take it anyways. But I thought after he defended, I had nothing here, but I should have calculated further. But I play bishop takes c2, which isn't the best move. After bishop takes c2, h takes g6, and I just take the g6 pawn back with the bishop. And here I have two monster bishops and a good rook controlling the d-file here. And white is just busted. He decides to castle for some reason, completely hanging his knight. And he resigns here. Game 2. In game 2, I realized last game I should have calculated more and did better. And did the best to my ability even if I was tired. So here I did my best to think everything through. And I believe this was a slightly better game than the last one. So e4 was played. c6, d4, d5, a Caro-Kann. e5, the advanced Caro-Kann with the bishop f5. He plays g4, which is a very interesting line that I know, but I don't remember the full theory. But bishop g6 and h4, h5 is all theory. h5, g5, he locks it down, which I thought just helps me after e6, and now my king side is... there won't be any attacks anytime soon. f4 is played, which is a bad move. This whole game, my whole plan was to try to take advantage of these weaknesses, but I couldn't really find the idea. c5, attacking the weak d4 pawn. He plays c3. Here I should have taken, and after queen takes, which is the best move apparently, knight c6, or after c takes d4, knight c6, putting pressure. I should have did this because it also opens up the c-file for my rook, but I did not see that as I was tired. But knight c6 putting more pressure on this pawn, and bishop b5 allows this pawn to be kind of defended even more. Here, I actually saw a queen b6 for a second, but I somehow hallucinated that the knight can protect this bishop or something, like knight c3. But I forgot that because c3 is played, knight can't go to c3. And I didn't play queen b6, I play rook c8, which is my usual move when this knight is being pinned. And knight to e2 is played, protecting the d4 pawn. Bishop b4, here I should have played a6 or queen b6. But here I thought that I could have even more space in my opponent's side of the board. So I attacked the rook, rook h3, and knight e7. Oh yeah, I remember. My goal for bishop e4 was to bring my knight in to f5. So rook h3, knight e7, d takes c5 because I blocked the knight, and because I blocked the bishop with the knight, and the bishop isn't staring at the pawn if you were to take. And here I play a6 here, because I wanted my rook to have pressure on this pawn, and or potentially just lock it down here so there's no pin problems and my knight can easily go to f5 without being attacked or anything. So a6, he goes a4, and here I should have played bishop to f5. Oh yeah, bishop f5, but instead I play knight to f5, which attacks this pawn. Why bishop f5 is because it adds protection here and my knight can come here maybe after trades. Or I can go knight g6, putting pressure on this pawn here. It adds a lot of options for my knight, but I play knight f5, which kind of traps the bishop outside of something really safe. For example, knight d2 could be a thing at some point, attacking the bishop. But b4 is played, starting a queenside attack. I really wanted to play a5 here, but after b4 I didn't like it because my knight is kind of pinned and it could add a discovery here. For example, a5, something like b5, but apparently the engine likes it. I mean, it thinks it's fine after knight b8, but I did not think this far because I was mostly tired, but I was like, this is bad. I didn't really think about anything else. But bishop g2, the point of this was to get my bishop, for example, if he played h2, to f3 and potentially g4, having a nice outpost here on this diagonal and pinning the knight to the queen. But that wasn't played. He plays rook g3, and here I was tired, so here I hallucinated that after knight takes g3, he would have some sort of compensation because he's attacking my pawn. But the thing is, even if he were to take this pawn and I'd give him a rook for a knight and his queen comes in, I'd still be a rook. No, I'd still be a whole knight up. And so there was no danger against this pawn. So I was against it. And here I calculated knight takes h4 is kind of fine here. White has an advantage, but I didn't really think like it would be that great. But after knight takes h4, white actually can solidify his position a bit. But I would have a passer. That's my thought process, that I'd have a passer and he would have to dedicate all his pieces to the queen side, but that's not what happened this game. Knight d4 is played, putting pressure on this knight. And here the pawn and the rook's protecting, so I didn't really need to add an extra protector here. And I wanted to get my bishop safe because it's kind of out here doing nothing. So bishop e4 is played. And then knight d2 attacking the bishop. And here I go bishop g6, allowing room for my knight to come in and potentially attack this knight and allow the passer to come up. And knight 2 to f3 is played, attacking my knight. And here I calculated that if I were to take well, actually I didn't really calculate it that well because I thought he had something after this. And I was seeing ghosts, I guess, because I was tired when I played this. I had no sleep for the past 2 days. But I was seeing ghosts, and that was a bad move. I really wanted him to take this way, so my bishop would have strong control over the diagonal. But that's not what happened. He plays rook h3, barricading my pawn. And here I had the idea of h4 to pin the knight to the queen. But I didn't calculate further. And he actually has queen e2. And after something like bishop h5, he has knight takes f5, and now my pawn structure is messed up. It's fine. This pin's fine because the queen could just move anywhere it wants. Or something, because the rook is protecting the knight, so the queen isn't really pinned. But I calculated that I'd have a very good pin here. And then after I play h4, the queen just moves. So that kinda sucked. I should have calculated a little better, but I was tired, so I did the best that I can do. And knight g3 for an outpost here. I calculated that sometime in the future my bishop might come here, or I actually wanted to move my knight here after moving my king to possibly e7, but I really wanted to get my bishop better situated before doing that. And he plays b5 here, which is the first mistake because it allows me to kind of free myself, because I was being kind of constricted here. And so a takes b5, bishop takes b5, which is another mistake. I calculated queen takes, and then my queen would have to come to c7, defending the pawn and the knight. But that's not what happened. He actually played bishop takes b5 here, keeping the pin with the bishop instead of adding more pressure on this knight. And knight to e4 is played. The goal of knight to e4 is to potentially take here, or allow my bishop to take. And bishop b2 is played to protect this pawn in here. I was debating bishop takes or knight takes, and I kind of wanted to attack his queen and maybe at some point give a check here in the future, but so I take knight takes c5, queen d1, queen to a5 here, pinning the pawn to the king and attacking the bishop. And knight d2 is played to potentially go to b3 or something. And bishop e7, getting ready to castle, getting my dark squared bishop out. And he goes to b3 here. I go queen a7, which is one of the best moves, getting out of the attack and protecting this knight and potentially... Oh yeah, here, the reason I played a7 is because I wanted his knight to take at some point. And at some point I would have a good look at the g1 square for check. And I would have a good attack on his weak king here. So a4 is played, protecting the bishop for some reason. And bishop f5, which was a blunder. I had only like 1 second left. I was trying to calculate the best move. I had 1 second left. And the best move of that is actually king f8 to get ready to attack with this knight here on c6. And here I had 1 second left when I played this move, and I completely forgot that the knight was looking here. So e takes f5, and now my king side is kind of busted and these pawns will come down. He plays knight d4, adding new pressure on this knight. And here I played knight g6. Oh yeah, he was attacking the knight and this pawn, and I didn't want this pawn to fall. So g6, keeping my king side kinda intact. Queen to e2, knight to e4. The reason why is because he was actually preparing to push this pawn down, and he has 2 attackers on the e6 square. And so I play knight to e4, putting pressure on this pawn and also blocking the queen from looking here. And he plays e6. And here, it was like a switch flipped in my head. Like I knew where all the, I looked at the board and I knew exactly where all my pieces should be. Also calculated this line real fast. I knew that this would be a bad move after king f7. And I also looked at queen g1 check, and I didn't like this line. Here I instinctually knew after I play f takes e6, I instinctually knew that white was lost here. He was busted. Here I was hoping he would take this pawn, and as soon as he did, I blitzed out like 4 top engine moves in a row, and I just blitzed into a checkmate on white. So king f7 is played immediately because I calculated king f7, knight d4, knight takes d4, c takes d4. And here, not queen takes because it's defended. Here, without thinking at all of this was instinctual at this point. It was like a switch flipped in my head. I just knew where all my pieces should be, and I didn't think at all. I played queen a5 real quick, king f1. I played knight g3 check because I saw a fork here. He has to sacrifice his rook. Rook takes g3, h takes g3, and here I'm threatening h1 check. So best move, queen g1 defending. And here I immediately play rook h2, going after this bishop here, and having the 7th rank control. And after queen t5, I immediately play queen d2, and he plays queen takes d5 check. And here I already knew, like instinctually, that he has no more checks, and that my king's completely safe, and that he will just be mated in a few moves. And so here, king g7, queen e5 check, and after king f8, having no more checks, he actually had about 1 minute left on the clock, and he ran it down to 0, because he realized there's mate in 1, but he didn't see any way to prolong the game, like bishop e2, queen takes e2. Wait, was it queen takes e2? Queen takes b2, then rook f1. Like there's ways to prolong the game, but I guess I didn't see any defense against queen g2 checkmate or queen e2 checkmate. And so here he ran the clock down, and it was over. So yeah, these videos will be put to a halt for a while until I get my sleep schedule on point. But I will keep practicing studying this game, but I will not play this game. But yeah, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and peace out. Have a nice day.